It is 6:37. We will reconvene open session and report on reportable action taken in closed session.
Nothing to report, Mayor.
Thank you. Can we unmute because, could we unmute? Okay. We will, please join me and let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance led by Council Member Stowe.
Salute, pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, with liberty and
Please remain standing. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to lead us in an invocation? Please.
Thank you, Heavenly Father, that we can be here today. I just pray that you'll give the City Council your blessing and your wisdom. I am so grateful for all these volunteers, leaders of our community. I pray your hand of protection over them, and I pray that you will continue to give our City Council the wisdom to make the right decisions. I thank you for them. In Jesus' name, amen.
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 Amen. I would like to take a brief moment of silence in honor of the 7 Marines and the 1 sailor whose lives were lost as their amphibious assault vehicle sank in the Pacific Ocean. Condolences and sympathy go to their families and to all who have been affected as each individual one began their eternal life journey. Thank you. You may be seated. We will now move into oral communications. This is the opportunity to address the council on any matter of interest, whether on the agenda or not. Please address all items not scheduled for public hearing at this time. Unless additional time is authorized by the council, all commentary shall be limited to 3 minutes. If you are here for the public hearing, item number 12, please hold your comment until then, when that item comes up, and you will be given time at that moment to address. And we will now move on to oral communications. Is there someone that would like to come up and address the audience? Thank you.
Good evening. I'm not sure you can hear me well through this mask.
Yes.
But you're all dealing with the same thing. Good evening, Madam Mayor and City Council members. I'm Greg Woodard. The business address that I'm here tonight concerning is 22 East Oak Street, which is the new Fugazi's restaurant that we've labored and fought so hard to get here for probably well over 5 years before they opened in February, only to be closed down in the middle of March, as we all know. Unfortunately, they did not have enough time to build what I would call a fan base. The foundation of their customers, which is return customers that will come back in, every week. It's kind of, well, it will never be cliche, but it's almost cliche to say that we're in unprecedented times. And they're reaching out for a lifeline. Their owner, Mike Flieger, who could not be here tonight because this all came about from a meeting that we had with the planning department this afternoon, and they requested that I come and speak, even though it's not on the agenda. They felt like that it would be something that you would need to hear from a business owner, from someone associated with a business owner, even though I'm not an owner of the restaurant. It's my building, and we labored hard and long and and spent a lot of money to get it to this point. But we're in danger. We're in danger of not just losing Fugazi's, but many other businesses. The Independent Restaurant Association came out with an article that said that there's probably, unless you're a franchise restaurant, there's probably close to 85% of the independent restaurants that will not be able to survive this. That's a staggering amount. That's a staggering number, I know. But it's realistic, because unless they've got a stream of income coming in, and unless we can create an emergency ordinance or something to allow us to use public spaces and private spaces, and within some kind of parameter that the city planning department and the administrator is able to approve and expedite quickly, we're gonna lose even more folks, even more businesses, more jobs, more tax revenue, and we can't afford it. Nobody can afford it. I mean, if you're one of the few lucky ones to have a solid income with a paycheck every month, whether you show up or not, then you're able to sleep at night. But for these folks that are looking to pay bills and have got a base expense account that isn't going to go away, their rent's not going to go away, their refrigeration for their food isn't going to go away. The minimum number of people that they have that need to come to work to be able to support the few customers they have isn't going to go away. And it's important, and all I'm asking you to do tonight is to give direction to the city planning department and allow them to make some determinations and some calls on the street, if you will, literally. I think if you've driven by what we've done out on Main Street, the sales, the sunshade sales that we put up, they're tasteful and they're quality, and we're meeting all of the CDC guidelines by placing the tables at least 6 feet apart. There's the ADA requirement of 4 feet of pathway is more than that. We've probably got maybe 5.5 feet at any given space, at any given spot that is available for walkway and meets ADA requirements. So I don't know what else I can say. I don't know what else I can do other than to just ask your support, and I know you do. I know you support this, and I know it's some tough calls that you folks are having to make. I would not want to be in your shoes about some of the calls you're making, because some of the calls you're making are literally whether someone survives or whether they have to file bankruptcy, and that's tough shoes to be wearing right now, and I wouldn't want to be in your shoes. But I'm asking you for your support. If we can meet, I mean, you folks are doing your job. You're getting the word out, and you're telling them, this is what you need to do. You need to wear a mask. You need to stay 6 feet apart. I think the CDC guidelines said that you're in danger if you're with someone for in less than 6 feet of space for 15 minutes or more, and so we're not trying to be within 6 feet of each other. We're spacing it out. I'm here and able to answer any questions if somebody's got a concern, but I think I've got the plan here that I was hoping to maybe show somebody from the planning department tonight, but we can do it in the morning. But I think we've met all the guidelines, and you guys, along with other cities like Visalia, like Clovis, offering emergency abilities to give private business public spaces. It would be nice to be able to have more attention drawn to the businesses that are open. Maybe that can be done through the chamber or through some kind of events or something like that, but this is something that they need every day, not just a one-time event, not just a weekend, but it's something that they need to have available. And I don't know if you folks know this or not, but if you sit out on Main Street, at least at our location there at the corner of Oak and Main, you can literally, it's like the buildings on both sides of Main Street provide a wind tunnel. So even on a hot day, there's somewhat of a wind or a breeze that blows through there. Now, I've been out there multiple times to try to test it out and understand whether or not it was true or not, and it really is. And so we've put up the sail shades that attach to our building and extend out over the sidewalk. And we think that the more people will know about it, because people are begging to get back to some kind of normality. They want to go out. They want to be at a restaurant besides having to eat in their car or eat in their home. And Fugazi's gives that opportunity if we were able to provide that. It would be nice to close off Oak Street, but you've got to understand, in the summertime, Oak Street it's an oven cooker right there because it faces the south and the sun is on the south side of the building. So it's very difficult to create the shade, but we can create the shade on Main Street all day long, all the way from 11 o'clock to...
Mr. Woodard, I don't want to cut this short, but I'd like for you to summarize.
I appreciate that. I thank you for your
Thank you.
time, and I'm available for questions if you'd like to ask any. But I'd just really appreciate your support to give direction to the planning department.
Well, I appreciate it, and this is Oral Communications, and you have already probably reached out to someone in our city department, so I'm certain they will follow through.
Appreciate that.
Thank you
so much.
very much.
Yes, thank you.
Please?
I just want clarification, because I couldn't hear it real well. Is that Main Street that they're asking for?
No, not Main Street, it's the side, it was
No,
Main
it
Street?
is Main Street.
It is Main Street,
Yeah.
yeah, because she couldn't hear.
Not Main Street, but Main Street sidewalk.
Main Street
have-
sidewalk,
We
Oh,
have,
sidewalk.
sidewalk.
Thank you.
yes,
Thank
I'm
you.
sorry.
Thank you very much. Okay.
Could I have one more thing? When it does start to cool off in October, November, December, I think it would be a great idea to look at maybe some of the parking spaces or something to expand that area. But right now, the sidewalks would be fantastic.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to come up under oral communications? Please do so. Thank you.
Madam Mayor and all the city council members, my name is Pastor Peter Scollenbeer. I live on Salisbury, but I'm the pastor of Porterville First Assemblies of God. And we as a church have been tremendously blessed in the sense that we have been here for our community. As you are aware, we have Helping Hands use our facility that has given meals. Our church currently is able every Friday to give close to 200, even if not more than 200 boxes that come from, it's called Farms to Families, through the USDA. And at 8 o'clock, we pass them out. When they're gone, they're gone. And I think it's wonderful that we're able to do that. I'm actually coming for a subject that I wasn't able to make, which was the fireworks. As a small church who reaches the community, who is a blessing to the people around us, who does our very best to not discriminate at all, we really have greatly benefited from the fireworks. And living on Salisbury, which is the other side of town, I am very much aware that there is fireworks going on. Even just 2 days ago, there was still some fireworks going on. But I would implore you not to cancel, and I don't know if there has been a decision or not, but I would implore you not to cancel the Safe and Sane fireworks. And the reason why is because it is a great benefit. And you might think, well, Pastor, should you count that in your budget? No, but I don't count my air conditioning breaking in my budget either. And so there's a couple of things that I'm concerned about. And I understand there's only 12 stands, or there are 12 stands. However, I would be perfectly all right with it, because I did have a fireworks booth this year. I would be perfectly all right not to be on the drawing list next year to allow other organizations to have some type of a rotation system. But the fireworks is actually very beneficial. Yes, you could say your profit is only 30%, but 30% is a lot, especially in a year like this year. Again, I hope that you would not punish the people that do it right and the organizations that bless the community with their limited resources. And when they do have fireworks, and when they have been drawn, that you wouldn't punish them for all the people that use illegal. And it's even questionable if the illegal fireworks would disappear because we suddenly no longer have one and we would have nothing. it's just something to consider. And maybe another good thing would be not just to talk to me, but to other nonprofit organizations and get some feedback from them as well, because I was unaware that that was even going to be on the agenda a while back or just after the fireworks, and I was out of town as well. I do want to thank you because I think you guys are doing a wonderful job, and I'm grateful that I'm part of this city. As you can tell by my accent, I'm a foreigner, and I love America, and I will always be, as long as I live in Porterville, I will be here to be to your aid, to be your assistant. Although my ministry is spiritual, I also think there's a lot of physical things that we can help in as well. God bless you, and thank you for hearing me.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else that would like to come forward under oral communications?
My name is Mary Steenbergen. I'm not with any organization. I'm just more or less just coming in to ask how is it like that the disadvantaged homeless population be able to access any type of resources for utilization, basically, because they're not knowing how and where. Plus with the offices like over there at the government building, they're shut down because I guess some people tested positive for COVID. So I got that news update yesterday. So that's basically what my question is how do we go about getting the resources for people that are disadvantaged or do not have access to that?
Why don't you please leave your name and phone number with city staff, and someone from the department will be able to reach out to you.
Okay,
And that way, they can call you and provide you with the information with regard to the resources of availability for the homelessness.
okay.
Please do. Thank you very much. If there are no other oral communications, do we have any that have come in?
No. Your Honor, no oral communications came through via email.
Thank you very much. We will now move on to the reports. This is the time for all committee, commission, board reports, subcommittee reports, and staff informational items. We will begin with the AB 1234 reports required pursuant to Government Code 53-232.3. The Tulare Water Commission, I carried that over from the last council meeting. We met on Monday, July the 13th. The minutes of June 8, 2020 were unanimously approved. There were no public comments. This meeting was overall informative with legislative updates, staff reports. The one item I will share. San Joaquin Valley Water Infrastructure Financing Plan was presented by Tommy Esqueda, Fresno State Associate Vice President, Water and Sustainability, Executive Director, California Water Institute. What he presented were the water shortage condition factors such as population growth and economic development, climate change, aging and deteriorating infrastructure, groundwater overdraft, etc. It encompassed the San Joaquin Valley region, the 8 counties, 21 groundwater basins, and the 108 groundwater sustainability agencies. In the plan, it made reference to water shortage condition factors, which were outlined as it related to domestic well depths and static water elevation. With regard to the California Water Resilience Portfolio Initiative, the stakeholder engagement sessions are slated for Saturday, August the 31st and September 7, 2019 to cover urban, agriculture, environment, and disadvantaged community. The recommendations noted were to create an organization and governance structure to implement a shared vision, develop a financing strategy to fund shared vision, to develop project delivery plans such as water user coordination, facility planning, environmental permitting, land acquisition, design and construction. The socioeconomic considerations were presented in graph with regard to history, poverty trend in the San Joaquin Valley versus the state of California from 1970 through 2017, and it referenced that we are so economically disadvantaged. With regard to the historic ag sector employment trends, again, San Joaquin Valley versus State of California, 1970 through 2017, we are economically disadvantaged. We are ag-centric for jobs. Regional economy, there was a brief graph breakdown of annual farm receipts versus taxable transactions from 1997 to 2018. In the proposed infrastructure elements and estimated costs, they were itemized to include new conveyance canals, existing conveyance canal repair rehabilitation, new groundwater storage banking, facilities recovery, new surface water storage facilities, drinking water facilities, wastewater recycling, etc. The program costs were listed for the total water investment program cost of $7 billion. The year-by-year program activities were listed with dollar amounts beginning with year one over 10 years for the total of $7 billion inclusive of the revenue requirements. It outlined the debt financing plan, the description of implementation sequence and plan, the phase one, the planning, organization, and governance, the phase two of the project financing, the phase three of the project delivery. Then what was presented was the joint powers authority organization structure of the organizational chart. There was a lengthy discussion, and at the end and conclusion of the presentation, it was proposed by the Water Commission and recommended to forward to the Board of Supervisors for further review and support. That concluded that meeting, and our meeting for August the 10th was canceled. That concludes the report. We will now go on to PATA Ad Hoc Committee meeting. Vice Mayor Reyes?
Thank you, Mayor. On the 24th, Councilmember Stowe and I met virtually with some staff and then members of the Tribal Council as well as staff on their end to continually discuss, as we have for some time, the project under development that the tribe looks to develop near the airport. It's just a continued discussion of the potential of the development as, of course, there's a lot to consider with the project. So the discussions have gone on for some time, and they revolve around access to water and the requirements to do the project. It's something that we continue to discuss, and we will have future meetings about. And we were fortunate to see many of the Tribal Council members virtually online. As you can tell, the project is starting to ramp up to something that is very important to them, as well as it's been a cooperative effort to look at all the potential factors of the project up until now. So I anticipate hearing more about it very soon. And I'd like to ask if Councilmember Stowe has anything he wanted to add.
We can't hear you, Councilmember Stowe. Unmute.
Yes, it is, and I apologize. I'm sorry. I was just talking away, and when I wasn't getting a response, everybody's looking at me funny from here. But as the Vice Mayor mentioned, we did meet with them virtually, and to our surprise, the majority of the council was involved in the meeting. And I took that opportunity at that time to say I was ready to find out if today, if they had a groundbreaking and what buildings would go up on it, and I was really shocked that no one can answer that for me. So I'm hoping in the future that that will be resolved, and we'll know what facility is going to be on the premises. I'm sure they're working on it, but I think I might have surprised them with that question, because I'm not sure if they know exactly what's going to be on there yet. But because of the COVID, and they're strapped for money, I think, for this project, and it's going to be hard for them to going to be a while before they recover from it, and as all of us, of course, because of the COVID virus. But with that, I know the project's going to carry on, and hopefully, we'll have another meeting again this Friday, and maybe we'll get some answers from them, and then.
Thank you very much. We will now move on to staff informational reports.
Thank you, Your Honor. This is the meeting that we report quarterly a number of different activities consistent with council's request, charitable car washes, code enforcement, golf course, and the like. And so happy to answer any questions. Department directors are available upon request.
Council members, did you have any questions? Please.
Yes, I would like to congratulate Mr. Moore for the golf course usage. Those are the types of numbers we like to see. So congratulations.
Yeah, I was going to mention that as well, the golf course and the OHV. And I'm sure it's, because people want to get outside because of the virus, but, it's good to see it's picking up.
I had a question. If we're, in the code enforcement report, there was a category that was general, and I was just curious what, if it was limited just to the mundane, or what types of, what general would cover specifically, because I know that was illustrated what the specifics were throughout, but I noticed that category had a lot of responses, and so I was just curious what would fall into that category. I'm sorry, were
From the
we
code
under the
enforcement
reports?
report. Chief Lapierre, do you have
Sure.
some detail on what that category includes?
Yeah, when the general category, it's, again, you're right, council member, it's for the mundane, or when folks can't necessarily discern what their complaint is or what category it should go into. We find a lot of different ones. They'll do water waste in there, they'll do trash, waste, there'll be some that are just do not have a category and they'll fit there. But staff goes through and they'll pick those complaints out of there and put them into the proper category. But the general is in there for folks that just, for whatever reason, they can't figure out, where to put their complaint. So it gives them someplace to put it, and then we reroute it to the proper section. Or it may stay there because it just does not fit in any others.
Okay, thank you.
Very well.
Did anyone else have any questions on the report?
Looked like Councilmember Peñalosa was going to talk, but I believe it's.
I think Councilmember Peñalosa, I think he's having
Was it frozen?
technology.
It's frozen up on me.
Yeah. Huh. Did he go off?
He dropped out, he's going to have to come back in.
He's going to have to come back in. Please, go ahead, Councilmember Stowe.
Through our city manager, Mr. Lawless, and I kind of lodged a complaint to Donnie about our parks, Veteran Park and Zala Park, how they were I didn't think they were up to standard, but I want to commend Donnie that Veterans Park is coming back, and I appreciate that very much. And I know that we had some issue with it last year, and we put some, or year before last, maybe last year, and we put some money into it, and I just thought they were starting to neglect it again, but it's starting to look much better, and I want to thank Donnie for that. I appreciate it.
Okay. Did Councilmember Peñalosa come back on?
Yes, Your Honor. Take it some time.
Mayor, are we having issues with the online?
Yes, there's a service issue that we're having to address with Charter. So the YouTube live, the live YouTube feed is not working due to a Charter issue.
I just had somebody ask about it.
Okay, did he come back on? I can't see on the screen.
I believe he did, it's just taking some time for him to load in.
Okay.
Maybe having a charter issue. I don't know who his service provider
Okay,
is.
I can't, yeah, because I can't see it on here. Okay,
He's having connectivity issues.
bear with us, technical issue.
It's not on the report, but the slough over by, the fire station 2, is it on Newcomb? Does that get cleaned regularly? And by who?
The slough by Fire Station 2?
Yes.
What do you, like refuse?
Did it get cleaned, does it get cleaned regularly?
Well, with debris coming in from when they open up the water, and it seems to all back up there.
Maybe Mr. Knight, best qualified to answer that.
Yeah, I just didn't want to chime in. So what we normally do with that is the property owner maintains the weed abatement along the slough because they still own that piece of property. The city staff patrols the road crossings and everywhere trash is collected. The whole time the slough is running during flood releases and rain events, staff goes through and cleans out any collected debris along the road crossing areas.
I believe there's debris there that's holding back some of the water.
At which location?
Next to the fire station, at Veterans on Newcomb.
Okay, I'll have somebody go by and take a look at that.
Thank you.
Still no Councilmember Peñalosa?
He texted me, he's having.
Okay,
Whatever his Wi-Fi is
all right.
he's having challenges.
Well, if he has a question, we can come back, and what we'll do right now is we'll go ahead and move on to the consent calendar. All consent calendar items are considered routine and will be enacted in one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these matters unless a request is made, in which event the item will be removed from the consent calendar. All items removed from the consent calendar for further discussion will be heard at the end of scheduled matters. Council,
Mayor,
please.
Mayor, may I
Yeah,
ask a question, a procedural question?
a procedural question, okay.
So I see that Councilman Penalosa is trying to get on. If he's unsuccessful at doing that, can we get him on at least by phone?
Yes, we can.
Yes, you can do that.
Can we just do that now since he?
Oh, there he is.
Oh, there he is.
There you are.
Yeah, I just didn't want to be cut out of the conversations.
They were coming up with a contingency plan for you,
Yeah, we were
Councilmember.
coming up with the Plan B. We were going to call you on the phone.
Oh, yeah, thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah, but we went on to consent calendar. We'll come back to your question on the staff informational reports if you had any. We're going to go back on that after we go with the consent calendar because we moved on to that one, Councilmember Peñalosa.
Mayor,
Yep.
oh, go ahead, sorry. Well, I just wanted to note that item 6, you have a potential conflict on because you live within 500 feet of,
Oh, one of the
One of the,
addresses, one of the
yeah,
addresses.
one of the addresses.
Okay,
or a couple addresses maybe.
okay. I will disclose that I have a conflict on item number 6 with with addresses being near to where I live. Does anybody else have any conflicts?
No conflict, but just like to say that the sales tax from the last quarter anyway seems to be holding well. We can only pray that it continues to do that. So I just wanted to point that out. Otherwise, I would move for approval of the consent items 1 through,
Where did you go?
sorry, I'm sorry for dropping everything. 1 through 11 with the conflict on number 6.
I'll second.
We have a motion and we have a second. No further discussion. Please call for vote.
Councilmember Gurrola,
Aye.
Councilmember Peñalosa,
Aye.
Councilmember Stowe,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Reyes,
Aye.
Mayor Flores.
Aye, passes unanimous. Councilmember Peñalosa, you had a question on one of the staff informational reports.
Yeah, I did. Thank you, Mayor. I had the question around the code enforcement report. There's a section on there that talks about, and sorry, is it because my computer completely went away, so I can't see it exactly, but it was around, there was a section that says completed, or I know it's hard. I don't know what I can't see it right here right now. It's still loading. But there was a section when it came down to, I think it was four rows down where it talked about there was,
Would the correct word be ongoing?
yeah, yes.
Okay,
Yes,
so,
thank you.
so there are some code enforcement complaints that take a little bit to mitigate, and we do things with compassion when we deal with the public if they've got multiple vehicles on their site, and we work with the owners to get those vehicles removed, or we're working with weed abatement. There could be a complaint that is ongoing, and so it could span into 2 different quarters, or with the ones that are completed, when we complete those, that's what we're showing is completed. But the ongoing ones are where we're working on them, and there will be completion soon. And they're given timeframes and requirements on that.
Okay, thank you. Actually, it opened up right here. Thank you for that. There was an area where it says code enforcement general, and it says 74 requests and 62 completed. Are some of those requests, do they come from the My Portable app by any chance? And how do you determine whether a request has been completed? And for example, if someone were to make a request for code enforcement on weeds on a sidewalk, is it determined that it's completed once the weeds are, cut, or would that? How do you come to determination that it's officially complete? Does that make sense?
Okay, so if we have a code enforcement complaint, I think you were froze and you're having Wi-Fi issues. When we have a general complaint that comes in, and sometimes weed abatement comes in on the general, and we get sometimes the general public doesn't know where to put the complaint, and that's why the general is kind of a catch-all for them, and then we'll route it to the correct place. But as far as how do we know when it's complete, and it does get generated from My Porterville, and it comes in, and we'll send a code enforcement officer out. And sometimes the complaint, what may appear to the general populace as a fire hazard is nothing more than someone's plant that is dormant, right? And so if we go out and see that there is no violation, then the officer will come back and they'll do an internal report on it, what they did, and which isn't open to the public, but they'll mark complete on it as well. But normally, if it is a active weed abatement, sidewalk stuff or anything, once that item is cleared, then it'll be marked complete.
Okay, thank you. Those were all my only questions. Thank you for clarifying it. Thank you, Chief Lippier.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on. All right, we will now move on to the public hearing.
Thank you, Your Honor. We have one public hearing scheduled for this evening, which is to consider landscape and lighting district annual assessments, and Mr. Moore will provide that staff report.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Julia, I don't know if we need to note that Ms. Gurrola lives within one of these. I don't know if we need to do that before the staff report. Ms. Gurrola lives within one of the districts.
Yes, thank you for the reminder. Councilmember Gurrola, you have a conflict of interest on this item, right? Because we don't have them separated out for discussion.
Oh, yeah, so do I need to leave?
They can be if that's...
We can do that if you want to do, we can separate that one. We can go ahead and do all of the other ones first and then have her.
We have numerous staff that also live in these districts.
That are here? Oh.
Including the one providing the report.
Oh.
I mean, does this have a financial benefit to us?
Can we disclose which ones we're in and therefore We could take those out separately if you would like.
Yeah, unfortunately, it doesn't meet the threshold for the public generally exception,
Okay.
but so that we still have to deal with the conflict issue.
Oh, okay.
So we need to pull, can we pull out all that are not, that we know don't have conflicts and handle those as a
Right.
block?
Um,
Or we can have everybody leave the room that's conflicted.
And then they're going to be included in the same resolution?
Oh, it's all one resolution. We didn't separate it out. Okay.
Why don't we
Then we need to
have-
conflict everybody out all on it.
So,
Okay, everybody just get up and leave.
all right, that includes you, because you're in one, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Everybody, all right, there goes Mr.
Everyone out.
There goes Mr. Lawless, there goes Mr. Moore, there goes Councilmember Garola.
Total's in one, but I'm not a party to the conversation. You might want to.
Who's gonna give Donna's
Probably should be
report now?
best to go ahead and.
But, Ms. Hildreth?
I'm just
Oh,
looking
okay.
for the item so I can present it. Thank you.
There goes the chief.
Okay.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it's half the
All
staff
right.
or more.
Mr. Neely, you're not on here? Okay. Oh, my
Anyone
goodness.
else? Anyone else need to leave?
All right.
It's a skeleton crew.
Okay, here we go, please.
Okay, let's go. So the city has created 72 landscape and lighting maintenance districts since 1989. The original LLMD had 17 areas annexed for new developments in addition to the original area. Since 1996, new districts have been formed for each new development, representing districts 2 through 54. Annually, a process of evaluating maintenance needs and establishing an assessment for each LLMD must be followed. At its meeting on July 21st, the City Council preliminarily approved the annual engineers report, which sets forth the proposed assessments for the 2021 fiscal year. The assessment process must be filed with the county by August 10th in order to be placed upon the tax rolls. The engineers report provides the financial detail on each district. In an effort to better facilitate the needs of the district, staff analyzes the fund balances and deficits of each district, as well as the projected expenditures and reserves. District fund balances are reviewed on a yearly basis to determine funding needs for maintenance, as well as determining assessment requirements. Based on this analysis, staff was able to determine that not all districts will be assessed this fiscal year. So the staff's recommendation is that the City Council conduct a public hearing on the 2021 assessment for the landscape and lighting maintenance districts to take comments or receive protests on the proposed assessments, and to adopt the resolution ordering the continued maintenance of landscape and lighting maintenance districts and confirming the engineer's report and assessments for fiscal year 2021. That's staff's report, and I'm available to attempt to answer questions.
Thank you very, oh, okay. It is 7:20. We will open up the public hearing. Is there anyone that would like to come forth? And do we have any that may have come in? Any comments for the public hearing?
No, Your Honor.
We have none. It is 7:20. We will close the public hearing. Council,
I'd like to make a motion to adopt the resolution for landscape maintenance and the district and the engineer's report for the assessments.
we have a motion?
I had a question, Mayor.
Well, we have to do a second so that we can have a discussion.
Oh, okay, I'll second.
Okay, we have a second, and now open for discussion. Councilmember Peñalosa?
Yeah, just my quick question was, how do you determine whether a landscape and lighting maintenance district needs to be assessed or not? What is the determinant? How does that come about?
Well, Patrice, can you answer it? If not, I probably can.
Well, they
Or
analyze
Peter.
it on an annual basis. They look at what the fund balance is, and they look at the maintenance needs for that particular district. And if there's work that needs to be done, then an assessment is proposed to be placed.
And it's
then that
already
comes before
set. There's a max already set. You can't increase it beyond what's been adopted because it's subject to 218.
Oh, that's right, it's a Prop 218
Yeah.
issue.
So they're already set, they were set in the beginning, but but then, yeah, Milt can actually probably best address, or Donnie can, is Donnie here? Or is he
Donnie's
out?
can
Donnie's
flip
out.
it out.
I've got no
He's out.
peripheral vision. So, yeah, so Milt will stand in for Donnie and explain what actually goes into deciding what needs to be done maintenance-wise from a practical standpoint.
Yes, they itemize each maintenance, like mowing lawns, trimming trees, planting flowers if the case, or trimming bushes. Each one of those items are functions itemized, and if it goes over, for the year, then we'll reassess the district and add the increase if necessary. Of course, they have to vote on it. Or if it's less than, we decrease it. If it's gone over for like 3 or 4 years and it's less than what we've been charging them, the cost, then we decrease the amount. So it's fair to everyone. Sometimes, and most of the time, it's going to cost more because the increase keeps going up because we have contractors to provide it. But, and now I guess with any new development we have, we just include the district in with it, so it's easier. Otherwise, if not, we have to have individuals vote on the assessment.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for that. Thank you. That was my only question.
Thank you very much. Okay, there's no further discussion. We have a motion and we have a second. Please call for the vote.
Councilmember Peñalosa,
Aye.
Councilmember Stowe,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Reyes,
Aye.
Mayor Flores.
Aye. Passes unanimous 4-1. Thank you. Yeah, it did. Someone needs to call Virginia in. I need to tell her to come in. I'm trying to wave to her to get back in. Come on in, Virginia. Thank you. Okay, we will now move on into scheduled matters.
Thank you, Your Honor. You have, there are 2 items before the council this evening. The first is to consider a letter of support for ratification of the Tule River Tribes Compact with the State of California for the proposed relocation of Eagle Mountain Casino to the city of Porterville. Let me begin first by saying, as was announced by the governor today, that he has signed and signed both the compact and the concurrence to the secretarial determination, which in a legal sense is essentially a piece of legislation that now needs to go to the legislature for approval, which previously the city has had representatives of the council provide testimony to the legislature as that legislation is being considered. It's actually bundled with a piece of legislation, which, I'm sorry, we haven't been told what the particular piece of legislation will be, but that, but there, sometime next week will be legislation that will be considered by the legislature, who is meeting kind of differently than normal. Typically, you would have committees, and then the body of the legislature, both the Senate and the House, Assembly, would meet separately. But they are meeting as the committee of the whole, so there isn't separate meetings that are occurring. They're meeting collectively, just as city council would, but also having ad hoc committees that would be meeting at the same time. So it's a matter of efficiency. So it is anticipated that sometime next week, there will be legislation considered by both the Senate and the Assembly to approve the compacts, because that's the step 2 of the process. Given what I would say was a surprise, expedient signing of the governor of the compact and the concurrence, would be to modify the letter, a draft letter that's been provided, allowing that it be addressed to the respective once we have information relative to what the legislation will be, that it will be combined with, as well as to, who the respective legislators would be seeking that approval. Should the council choose to support a letter of support. Sorry to be redundant.
No, it is good. The good news is that the governor did sign, and receiving the press release, and he made the announcement to
Yeah.
signing the concurrence.
The
and all
concurrence
of
and
that.
the compact.
And the compact, so, and it would just be a letter of support to the Cal legislative to be determined.
Right, we just need to
And-
change the audience for the letter of
And to
support.
support the compact and go with that. Council,
I'll make a motion that we, provide the letter of support.
thank you. We have a motion.
I'll second the motion.
And we have a second. There be no further discussion, please call for vote.
Councilmember Gurrola,
Aye.
Councilmember Peñalosa,
Aye.
Councilmember Stowe,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Reyes,
Aye.
Mayor Flores.
Aye, passes unanimous, 5-0. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Council. The final scheduled matter for this evening is your regular status and review of declaration of local, proclamation of local emergency. I wouldn't say there's been anything really notably has changed since your last meeting, just a couple of things that I'll highlight. One was the announcement by Governor Newsom of increased efforts to address community spread in the Central Valley, focusing on the 8 Central Valley counties, and allocating $52 million to the Central Valley. With that coming 3 support teams, which by my last conversation last week were not yet in Tulare County, but would soon be arriving. They are part assistance, I would say part support team, part strike team. So part of it is assistance in contact tracing, working on testing and trying to, and access to testing, but also with OSHA and ABC and others, ensuring that those businesses that are, operating consistent with guidances that have been provided, which will include as well the city. It's expected. There has been one county which has already had this team, one of these teams, which is Imperial County, and there was, just speaking to that, OSHA visited the cities in that county as well as businesses to ensure that they were following necessary protocols. So, and looking at how businesses are operating, what are the, how cases are being tracked and those sorts of things. So that is one of the things that I think by your next meeting, you will probably have read or have heard about the support teams and their activities within Tulare County, which if I understand correctly, those teams are the team that is assigned to Tulare County is serving Kern, Tulare, and Kings, if I understand correctly. It's the team is divided between these 3 counties. Certainly, at your last meeting was the urgency ordinance for face coverings, which we have had reports that have been brought into code enforcement, and there has been responses. Businesses have been visited with information provided, and I would say, notices of you need to do this. So there are members of the public that are making those requests, and so code enforcement MPD is following up on those as well as other engagement efforts. I did want to talk about homeless services for a period here. Project Room Key continues by the last count having 109 individuals being served. We don't know what that is in the Porterville area. It's not broken down what it is in Tulare, Porterville, or Visalia, but we just know cumulatively it's 109 in Tulare County. We are having, as the report indicates, there is a final improvement that needs to happen to the navigation center, which is the installation of a fire alarm and suppression system, which the contractor is delayed in its implementation. So I did want to bring that to the council's attention. This is an urgency issue. Turning Point has actually hired all the employees. They are ready to open. Something that perhaps the council wants to consider, and is they're not able to open as an overnight shelter without that fire suppression system. But we may want to talk about initiating services at the site because the employers are hired, just not allowing overnight services. But at least to begin providing services. There's a great frustration that Turning Point has with their contractor. They've not had this issues previously. So I just want to make you aware that the contractor is delayed and frustratingly so. That is the final improvement that needs to be done to allow for overnight residential. PDC, the state, for a period of time, we were not receiving any information with regards to residency there. Now that data is now being reported by the state. Currently, right now, there are 14 patients receiving care at the alternate care facility. The high was 22 about a week ago or so. There's a daily log that's kept that you can see what the patient load is. Also happy to report that Veterans Memorial Building will continue to be used as a testing site through this month, and some discussions are going on about potentially extending that beyond August as well. That's an active conversation between the state, the county, and Veterans Memorial Building. Legislation federally continues to be discussed. You had the House of Representatives that passed the HEROES Act. And the Senate has been talking about the HEALS Act. There's some significant differences between the two, both in magnitudes as well as some of the provisions of that. So there continues to be no successor legislation beyond the CARES Act that was passed earlier this year. In regards to CDBG, community development is busy working with folks that are inquiring of that. I would say it's fair to say it hasn't been as, at least by last report, unless it's different, has not been as quickly accessed as has been hoped for. So there are different webinars that are being scheduled to try to push that message and other referrals. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions or concerns that the council may have.
Council members,
I have a question. Oh,
please.
it's on the Navigation Center. Is the center set up to have the social distancing and everything else that's required for the COVID?
Yes.
Okay.
We are just waiting on a suppression system to be able to open.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question.
Please.
In terms of the homeless lunch program, is that still something? I know the city, I'm not too sure we're still partnering with that, or has that been given up to the nonprofits or the churches? And if so, like, how is that going in terms of the homeless infested for COVID? Has there been any reports around that, or I'm just trying to figure out like what's going on with the homeless community. Do we know anything about?
Yeah, as reported a couple meetings ago, Helping Hands did reinstitute their services program, and at which time the city, because the city started it because Helping Hands had closed initially. They did reopen, at which then had the city close its homeless lunch program, and that's been, Donnie, probably maybe upwards of a month. I was going to say, but it's been about 4 weeks. So, the council did take an action, I think at its last meeting, to provide the opportunity for the churches to, there was a, I don't want to call it permit, but permission to use the J Street parking lot for the weekend homeless lunch program that they deliver, which the council did approve at your last meeting.
Mr. Morales, are we assisting Helping Hands at all with the meals in any way, since we discontinued ours?
No.
Okay.
I had another question. At the Navigation Center, they're going to be checked for COVID, and I don't know if that's going to include any kind of testing.
Well, I can tell, so Turning Point operates existing facilities in the Fresno area, so I would have to, I am certain they have protocols for entry.
The other is, do you need a motion or in order for for Navigation Center to be open, but not fully utilized overnight?
Well, I think as there is a very uncertain timeline for the fire alarm system to be installed, that I think it would be helpful to know if the council, given the status, believe me, Turning Point is imploring the contractor. We are in the middle of a pandemic. You have individuals that are not housed that we wish to house. We need you to get this done. And so I would say there are services that I think we need to engage about discussing in light of the fact that I think it could be months, and I don't want to be unrealistic, it could be months before the Navigation Center would be able to house over evening.
Well, I would move that we go ahead and open for services with no overnight sleeping quarters.
I would second that.
And there's concerns, and I know the mayor's involved in this intimately. She's aware that the contractor issues, they've actually had a change in personnel given, there's just been a number of issues the contractor has provided. So we just believe there are valuable services that aren't being provided right now, which, although we can't legally provide for overnight residential, I think that there are services that we can begin to engage in trying to serve this important population.
Would their existing contract not allow for that? Or can they go ahead and do that?
Well, I think that's what we need to, I think we may need to revise some of those things.
Okay.
Jenny, I'm gonna defer to you on operational costs if a facility's not yet. I know that Turning Point is equally frustrated that these improvements are done. They've hired the employees. They've got the site ready to go. They've put the furniture in. I mean, it's turnkey, absent fire alarm and suppression system.
Is the contractor just refusing to finish, or is there?
It's been
They've
a
had
long
personnel?
They've had personnel issues and had folks leave the company and new folks now, and then the new contractor's now saying there's a new system that needs to be designed, not the one that, I mean, it is very frustrating.
Councilmember Stowe?
Well, I was wondering is it wise for us to open it up without suppression system even during the day? Or, because, I don't know.
It's open offices, and so, they have a couple of desks in there, and so wouldn't be that a lot of people, we can also find out what they're doing for social distancing, mask wearing. Dave just came back on the line. They're awake in an office setting. Nobody's going to be sleeping.
I'm just more concerned about the fire part portion of it.
Well, please, I want to be very clear. I'm not suggesting stay overnight, which is what the fire alarm, I'm talking about providing services, intake, at least to begin getting them into, I'm trying to remember the system that, Jenny or Jason, you're gonna have to help me with the name of the system.
HMIS?
HMIS, thank you. There's begin to track so that we can begin to serve this population when the facility's ready.
And some of the things that they're going to do, they're going to assist in getting people their driver's license and getting different information, their social security card. And so some of it is come in and they'll take you to these services to get them taken care of. And so it's really
They won't be sleeping there at all. I mean,
No.
okay.
And
I just messaged, I'm sorry, Jason, but even during the day, there's no sleeping or lounging or?
what John is referring to is only the data entry part of it, getting to know them, getting them into the system, like I said, getting them their paperwork, getting them documented, those kind of things.
Okay.
So I just spoke with Jody Ketchesai, who's the director of Turning Point, regional director for our region, and she's indicated to me that she would, be, of course, be open to opening for services without overnight stay and to providing any services that are needed. Obviously, while they're under construction, they'll have to be in and out of the areas while they install the fire suppression system and monitoring system. But she's happy to do that.
Well, I would keep my motion if the chief says that there isn't any issue without having the suppression there.
so, just like the city manager saying and Jenny saying, it's being treated like a B occupancy, like a business and not a residential occupancy. And so since there will be no sleeping, and if we get a letter from them stating that it's going to be treated like that, there would be really no risk, I believe, at all to allow them to do it. And then when they finally get their suppression and then fire alarm in, then they'd be open for residential occupancy.
Okay, cool.
So what I would include in that is that we receive a letter saying that it's only going to be used as a business.
Yeah, and the building department, I don't want to speak for Javier, but I would imagine they would issue a temporary occupancy permit with some sort of conditions on it, I would imagine.
Okay.
Was there a motion?
Yes.
Then I'll second. With all the stipulations in there?
We have a motion, we have a second. Is there further discussion?
Just that I agree with that. If it at all allows any other access to services from the initial things that would happen or gets a jump start on anything, I think that it's a great idea.
And just so that you are aware that it's been a long process for Turning Point. And they had begun the process, and they hired the staff, and this started back in April, May, and as you heard me report out, that we had thought we would be opening up in July, and that didn't happen. So there has been communication and trying to solidify a date for the installation of the fire suppression and the monitoring unit. So let's see when that happens. And I am very for the support of at least getting the services out to the homeless, as the passion has been from the beginning. No further discussion. Let's call for the vote on that, and then we'll do the other after, okay?
Councilmember Gurrola?
Aye.
Councilmember Peñalosa?
Aye.
Councilmember Stowe?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Reyes?
Aye.
Mayor Flores?
Aye, passes unanimous, 5-0 for the Navigation Center information. If there is no further discussion, I so move with the continuation of the proclamation of local emergency due to COVID-19.
I second.
We have a motion and a second, no further discussion. Please,
Well, if I have one question with that.
one
Doing
question.
this, one question. Now, while we're on this subject, can we address Mr. Woodard's request? Can we talk about that, or do we have to put it on the agenda for next time?
I mean, we can as part of this.
We can.
Yes, you can.
Yep. Okay, I mean, just briefly, just wanted to mention that, and we have all these downtown restaurants that, I think they're losing out because everyone else is putting up pop-ups and unable, in their parking lots, and they don't have parking lots. So, we might want to do what we can to help them as well.
So I think the issue, can I kind of outline what I think the problem is? And
Sure.
the city manager can correct me if I'm wrong. So we have you have industry guidance and we have our face covering guidance, basically our requirements under the state. They're called guidance, but they really are the state's requirements. So we have these competing requirements that would permit, you can permit the activities, but we can't maintain the distances we need to permit the activities. So what we have is under the face covering guidance, they're required while outdoors in public spaces when maintaining a physical, or you don't have to when you're outdoors in public places when maintaining a physical distance of 6 feet from persons who are not members of the person's own household or residence. So if that isn't feasible, when you're outdoors, you're supposed to be wearing a face covering. And then when you're in a restaurant, you don't have to wear the face covering, as long as you can still maintain that 6 feet away from persons who are not members of the same household. So from what I'm gathering is what I heard is because we're dealing with street right-of-way or sidewalk right-of-way, there's no way to utilize the sidewalk and have the dining on that sidewalk without violating those requirements. So that's the problem we're having with Main Street. So
and there's additional conflicting things out there. So the CDC came out and that face coverings and 6 feet distance is when you're going to be adjacent to someone for more than 15 minutes. I mean, it has a weird.
Yeah, but you got to realize the CDC is truly not a requirement. The CDC are just suggestions. Okay, so the CDC is not what's controlling in California. The CDPH is what's controlling in California. So we're kind of struggling with how do we figure out a way to reconfigure this area to make that work, and I don't know if that's possible on Main Street.
And here's the recommended course of action that staff has been working with, is that in Visalia and other jurisdictions, a nonprofit business association is just like you have the Chamber with the IRS Festival or other, where they seek a community civic event for encroachment into the right-of-way or closing of streets. In Visalia, the Downtown Visalians did it. In Tulare, it is their Downtown Business Association, where they've put together a plan with the local businesses and have come to the city, and it's a liability issue as well. Quite candidly, Visalia and Tulare are not engaging with the business individually, they're engaging with the business association. So I know that Ms. Byers has been trying to work with the Chamber of Commerce here on a plan to assist. You have a number of restaurants on Main Street that are looking at either parking lots to be able to set up in public parking lots, they are not private parking lots, or on the sidewalk. And as a city attorney, and Ms. Byers will speak, 10 feet doesn't allow for 6 feet distancing and a table to be set up. It just practically doesn't work. In Visalia, they have closed the parking spots on Main Street. If you've been there, situated very similar to Porterville, where it's diagonal parking, they have brought in concrete barriers, is what I would, like you would see when state routes are being worked on, the large concrete barriers. So to separate the traffic from those that are seated, and they're setting up tables in those parking spaces. What they are also doing, and I would just say this is because Visalia doesn't have a face covering ordinance. I'm going to be candid with you, that they're not enforcing the 6 feet social distancing.
Okay. We additionally have concerns about that is ADA. And so if you have someone who's in a wheelchair that goes to dine in an outdoor restaurant setting, it's impossible for Visalia to be complying with that the way we've seen photographs of it, because you can't get into the area. It's at an angle. We have a pretty sloped, and I don't know, Javier would be able to provide actual, but our crest, and then also some of our areas, our sidewalk to the street is 3 feet. I mean, it's pretty big. And then Main Street is pretty sloping. And so even if we were to put it in these parking stalls, Julie and I were in downtown today standing there, and it's a very awkward seating arrangement to be, leaning to one side or the other. It also, we're working on downtown and it being an aesthetic area and revitalizing the life down there. And from what I've seen from the Visalia model is they just have basically PVC pipe and tarp and it's not very attractive. What's really bringing this to light, Fugazi's, they had worked with staff. There was an email from one of our staffers that it was written in a way, and even when I read it, it seemed like he was providing approval, and he wasn't. And so there's been some controversy with that because they put up these sales. They're very attractive. Again, Julie and I went down there, and it looks very nice. However, the email wasn't an actual approval, and so we have some confusion internally as well, making it even more difficult for this restaurant owner. And so the frustration he was expressing is a little bit of that. It was staff's, I was calling it a passive approval when what it needed was a stamped zoning administrator approval, and that's not what they received for that.
Jenny, is there a way to, oh, sorry.
They already put, I haven't been downtown there. They already put the sails in the covers?
I don't know if Julie, I don't know if we can do this in this setting. If Julie was given, I think she has an example, photograph that we took there. We have a couple photographs of what's going on in other jurisdictions. One of the concerns, if we do a community civic event, we would like it to be, or we're requesting the chamber to do it an every night thing. I've seen photos of Hanford where they're doing it just on the weekends, and it's a huge clustering of people. And I think council has very much discouraged these huge things where if it's, every night of the week, some people go to dinner on Wednesday nights and want to avoid that crowd, but it still provides an opportunity. And so we wanted to look at something that dispersed that type of crowd and didn't make it a festival every weekend in compliance with council's request. So I don't know, Julie, do you have the ability to take the screen? Does Mike need to give it up?
Let me see if I can.
While that's happening, I'd just like to reiterate that no matter what the desperation level of a business owner, it is never okay to alter city property or damage city property by installing a pole, affixing a sail to a tree, which is also city property, without any kind of authorization, without having the shade be vetted for safety as far as the public is concerned in a public right-of-way, because it undermines the entire development process in downtown ordinances.
And that's what I was referring to. The email that he received, when you read just the email, provided approval. So it's a definite mistake on city staff's part.
Okay, I just didn't like the,
Okay, so I've got some images I'd like to share. Jenny had referenced what Visalia is doing, and so did Mr. Love. So this is a shot, an image that was taken of the city of Visalia. This is on their main street facing east, east of Church Street. There's a series of restaurants there, and they've got this K-rail barrier here, as well as a series of pop-up tents. Let's see. Sorry, I need to move my, there we go, to that side, and I should be able to move this here. Okay, so next one is actually, ironically, a picture of Fugazi's Visalia location, where you can see similar temporary improvements made for that location. It's not particularly aesthetic. I'm sure it's very functional, and of course it's temporary, but we would like to see something a little bit better in our downtown area. This is a downtown restaurant that has done something similar to what Visalia has done. We just noticed this late this afternoon, and we will be reaching out to let them know that they can't put this sort of thing here on the public sidewalk. But people, our restaurant owners, are getting desperate for finding ways to move forward and maintain their business in some fashion. There's another downtown business that has in their back area. This is on their private property, so they do have the ability to do that, but they've kind of set up a shade sail in the back area. Let's see, this would be on Hockett, I believe, west of Main Street. There you go. You can see me and I were
with my mask on.
very cautious, and both of us were wearing our masks, so we went out and took some photos. There's another downtown restaurant that has set up a few tables in the, as close to their building as possible to maintain the sidewalk distancing, but, folks are just, they're going for it. They're doing whatever that they can. This is another restaurant that is temporarily closed, as far as I am aware. The Vault in downtown does have a location for outdoor seating, but it is limited. During normal circumstances, I believe he's got 6 tables out here, but with social distancing measures, it would be more along the lines of probably 2 that could fit here in the front portion of his property, and then likewise he has this area in the back where he might be able to fit another 2 or 3 tables. And we're guessing based on having driven by. There's been no measurements or anything like that made. But that number of tables isn't necessarily going to help somebody to keep their doors open. Fugazi's, as Mr. Woodard referenced when he came in to speak to the council earlier, have put up some shade to attempt to create some downtown seating for their location. This picture was taken kind of across the street. Just for frame of reference, this is the Main Street location where he has put up the sales, and then this is the south face of his building, where the entrance to the second floor is back. Are you able to see where my cursor is hovering? Right there on the back portion is where the entrance to the restaurant is. I would assume that is where wait staff would be able to come out and serve folks.
Alcove there?
Yes. And so here's a closer image of it. This is taken along Oak Street facing east, up the ramp that one would use to access into the alcove, which is how you access the second floor.
No, the one in the front of the.
We have a closer picture.
Right, so then this is from the alcove facing west, and you can see that along Oak Street, there's not a whole lot of location where they could set up a table and obviously not meet the distancing requirement of 6 feet from a table, but even just if that weren't an issue, there's not a whole lot of spaces between sidewalk planters and the trash can and the bench and that sort of thing. So then this is a photo taken from the corner looking north on Main Street of the sales. And they are, 2 of them are adhered to the tree. They're wrapped using some sort of an elastic rope sort of device, so as not to damage the tree. And then here you can see a little bit further back, you see this steel post that has been installed in the landscaped area. They have 3 sun sails and 4 tables. There's 2 high tops overhugging the building that are just 2 seating tables, and then there's 2 lower standard height tables over here. Jenny had referenced ADA, and so I would imagine that folks with disabilities would be able to adequately be seated at those 2 tables. It's another image kind of showing the configuration of the tables a little bit better. This is an idea that we've seen in one of the professional organization magazines. This is not obviously in Porterville, but is a trend that is gaining popularity even before the pandemic. It's called a parklet, and it is where 1 or more parking spaces is converted to an extension of, sometimes it's a mini park, sometimes it is, as in this example, used as an extension of a seating area for an outdoor dining sort of situation. There's a variety of different mechanisms for it. I have a professional memo that was prepared by the American Planning Association related to best practices. There was a series of case studies done on various cities throughout the country that have done this and lessons that they've learned. It is one example of a mechanism where the spacing requirement may be able to be met. Certainly, it impacts parking in the downtown area, but it could be done in such a way as to if we can find a way to balance the loss of a few parking spaces with the ability of a business to stay open by expanding out into the public right-of-way a bit so that they can maintain the spacing that's necessary. It may be a solution that could suit the council's concerns as well as provide an opportunity for the downtown businesses. And so by way of example, these are 3 parking spaces that if you were looking right behind me as I took this photo, you would see the sun sails that were placed in front of Fugazi's location. So these are the 3 parking spaces that are immediately on Main Street, just north of that location where we had taken the pictures earlier. We haven't hashed out all of the details, but there is certainly a lot of technical information about what other cities have done and the legal framework of how they've allowed it, as far as whether or not permits are required, whether or not it's done by each business, who holds liability insurance, all of those things that you'd need to think through. There's been case studies about, and I'd like to take an opportunity to look a little bit more into that. But this is one way to take up a few parking spaces and provide that. The other alternative is, as I know that Jenny has mentioned, and I think others have also referenced, is we have a few downtown parking lots and doing those in those locations. They tend to be on the back sides of buildings, and so the aesthetic and that downtown feeling that you might want to have even in non-pandemic times is a little bit different. But in any event, without sounding too much like I'm advocating for one thing or the other, another idea that Jenny and I had discussed, and also Jason with the where'd my last image go here? Excuse me. I think I'm going to have to go back the other direction. Another idea that staff had shared with the chamber staff is potentially closing a segment of Oak, and there's a few different ways that might be feasible. I mean, Oak obviously is a public street, and so it gets a lot of sun and the heat of the asphalt. But other jurisdictions, this example is from the city of Fresno, where a restaurant has put up a large tent over it. Now, this is obviously a much larger restaurant facility, but they put up a tent in a parking lot area, something along these lines that could provide shade over a street segment, a very large tent, for example, and then some sort of barricades. They don't have to be concrete. They could certainly be. One idea that we were mulling over is, I don't know if you all remember those large wooden orange crates. I think it's very, pay homage to Porterville's past and throw some cement in the bottom of that with their poles sticking in that. And then you could hide the concrete with some sort of landscaping. And of course, these are just ideas. And obviously those ideas cost money to implement, but there are ways that we can see ourselves through this without it looking like that. So, in any event, whatever, there's a variety of different ways that we could find to move forward, but I think staff is hoping to get some sort of input on how we can help businesses to navigate this very difficult and unprecedented time. And I'm happy to.
The reason I brought this up, because I thought, my suggestion would be, what you showed was, a ramp out in the parking lots, but that one's a lot nicer than than what I've seen. In Westwood, they had that, because on the sidewalks, they needed it for the ADA and for wheelchairs. And besides, sitting on the sidewalk, I don't think I want people walking by my food while I'm eating and, talking and spitting in it and whatever the case may be. But I thought that would be something we might be able to do. But the only thing here, I do not see any protection from cars. And that's one thing that really bothers me, And I don't know if we could put KOs and beside there and planters out to hide them, but...
There are so many different images of different examples, what other jurisdictions have required. This was just the quickest one that I could find in this afternoon as I was preparing for this. But certainly other jurisdictions have concrete posts that they've filled, or steel posts with concrete, like a barrier, of so many different ways that it could be achieved.
Well, I just don't You know, I like to help them in any way we can because I don't think it's fair that, you know, the Black Bears and the Denny's can, you know, they can set up in their parking lots there, and these people are still struggling to find a place. So I just want to be fair about the matter.
And I agree with you, Mill, or Councilmember Stowe. And I like this image. I could see 3 of them in downtown where, you know, they could be utilized. They could even be used when we have events in the future. But I like this picture, and yeah, we're gonna lose some, yes, we're gonna lose some parking spaces, but we're going to gain in terms of the businesses, especially when we have a business who has invested in Porterville. The least we can do is try to find a way through this time. And that's why I said, you know, we need to move businesses different, because that's a choice. If you want to go and have dinner or lunch, that's your choice to expose yourself. But at least we can have something that is nice in our downtown. And I would say they'd have to be wearing masks except when they're eating.
I did want to mention too that as part of looking into this, that we examined the use of freestanding umbrellas on Main Street. I was the one that actually, or one person that noticed this and reported that there had been a change regarding the shade sale, as well as the additional seating and the use of city property to function on that shade sale. But there's also the use of freestanding umbrellas, which as far as I could tell, the area was completely unmanned. And as Mr. Woodard himself acknowledged, there is a gentle breeze that blows through Main Street. And if those umbrellas happen to fall over, because usually those umbrellas are accompanied by a table with a pass-through for the stick for the umbrella so that it aids in the stabilization. Mm-hmm. So should those blow over and go into traffic, that is a definite consideration. So looking at the materials that are potentially used, I think is something that is critical to having this work.
And if I may, this is why Visalia and Tulare has been working with their business associations to support their businesses, for this exact reason.
But has our chamber done anything to work with the businesses?
I know that Ms. Byers is trying to drive that conversation. Let me also say that the exhibit that was displayed of the sale connected to the tree is not allowed, nor was that ever approved by staff.
I do also want to acknowledge about 4 years ago at the California League of Cities, there was a discussion about this, and this was something that was brought up, and I think at the time staff and members of council thought that this was a good idea, along with putting things in the middle of the street to slow down traffic and having pop-up businesses to aid in the aesthetics of downtown. So I don't know that, I'm not opposed to this, and it's not a foreign concept, and actually it seems like somewhat of a necessity now. But as far as the safety for everybody, I think has to be the chief concern, and to not overlook safety in general, to be able to accommodate somebody's personal, a profit that somebody is going to make. I think that we have to keep a fine balance.
And I would agree, and I'm sure, I'm not the expert, but I'm sure there's ways to put something on there to make sure that the traffic doesn't abut to it somehow. I don't know. And that looks also, that structure also looks like it could accommodate the slant in our road on Main Street. I'm not the engineer either.
As I have heard and I have listened.
We do anticipate the I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I was just going to comment because as I've heard and I've listened and continued the conversation to everything that is, first of all, it's the overall safety of the public and the adherence to the mask, to be proactive to support our businesses and to assist and to help them in their endeavor to be able to provide their service. I have a question I'm going to ask Mr. Lawless, and maybe legal counsel can chime in. In all of this that has been presented, would the focus be to have the Porterville Chamber take on and work with staff to this regard?
Well, so there's a couple of things here. in all this conversation, we've not addressed the urgency ordinance for face coverings, because even this right here doesn't
Correct.
support that.
This is why, because face coverings is a part of the process,
Well,
part of this process.
Yes, if they wear face coverings except when eating. I believe I've seen that or
Right.
in other
Right,
situations.
but that doesn't, that picture right there doesn't support a pedestrian walking by being able to maintain 6 feet social distancing. So you have,
Oh, I see what
your
you're,
ordinance says that if you're not if you can't maintain 6 feet, you're gonna have a face covering. It doesn't address, what if they're eating?
Right, you need you need what you need is a 6-foot buffer between your eating area and your thoroughfare.
oh, okay.
That's the real issue at hand, because you can't, otherwise you won't be able to meet those requirements, because if you have a constant stream, of people walking by the eating establishment, there's no way to maintain it. And so, I mean, and that's what the rules say. It's like you can be outside, you can be eating, you don't have to have your mask on, but you are supposed to be 6 feet away from those, from others that aren't in your immediate family.
Which is why I believe the only way to feasibly do this is to close off the diagonal parking, allow that to be where the seating occurs, and the sidewalk is unmitigated, so that you have the appropriate distance.
That's the best way to do it.
That's the only way I think you can do it,
Yeah.
consistent with your ordinance.
I would have to.
Now,
agree
that might
with
be possible, and you could set parameters for how that's going to work, and then you can maybe, and like Mr. Lawless is suggesting, try to do the permitting centralized through another business organization or association, if you're going to have permitting at all, and we can discuss that. I mean, you can
So-
set requirements.
Right,
too.
and there's different approaches to this. I mean, whatever council's direction wishes to be on this. Like I said, in Visalia and Tulare, which are the examples that are being used, there were organizations that did this. Now, if you wish to do this yourself, Mr. Knight has some ideas about how, if you wish to expend some funds to support this, you could do some freeform concrete. He's had, there's ideas on how you can do, if the aesthetics are an issue or whatever it is, there are other ways to do that. He's had some ideas, but in the end, I think an important decision needs to be made by the council. Do you want to do this independently with businesses, or do you want there to be somebody that you are working with singularly in support of the businesses? Because not everybody's, you've got, as an example, the seller that wants to establish operations in the parking lot behind the business, in the public parking lot.
Mayor, can I make a suggestion?
Yes.
That we have staff, and I'm sure they're talking to the chamber already, but if they can look into this more and bring it back on the next agenda, because we're going around in circles now.
Yes, we are.
And they get more ideas and possibly present them to us, and possibly get with the chambers if they're on board of getting together and doing just as they're being the nonprofit organization or group that makes a request.
So that's the conversation that we had with them today. We're providing the information as to community civic events, that it would be, like I said, I'm glad we're having this conversation for a little bit of guidance for it. So the conversation that we had was, staff was a little bit uncomfortable knowing council's position to only have weekend events because of the driver that it was having, but rather a nightly event that hopefully we keep the numbers down a little bit. Mr. Lawless is correct. The seller is looking for the parking lot, and you start. Mine and Julie's activity today was really how can we best serve these, and it's going to probably end up being 2 or 3 places. The seller is too far from Oak. If you get tacos from Chingones, you're crossing streets and you're doing some of that. Mariscos is too far as well on one of the side access roads. And so it may be looking at 2 or 3 spaces in parking lots, bringing something back and coming before council. It is hot out there, and it was kind of odd to feel the breeze that was there at Main Street. There's that designer in us that were like, those are nice sails. Like I said, I was reading through the email chain. It was a conversation that was had between staff and Fugazi's, and the way this email was written implied approval. And so I don't know what the verbal conversation was before, but it does require a site plan showing us what you want to do. And so there's definitely miscommunication, and it's definitely from staff's perspective. And so we will get that rectified, also work with the chamber and get something brought back before you.
I appreciate that.
I would like
and
to,
Please go ahead.
I would like to add that I don't want to wait 2 more weeks. If we can get a meeting before that to get this resolved so we can get it moving, this businesses can't just continue to wait. And if we have to use some of our parking lots, because it's the same concept, they're going to use parking spaces in the front, but they can use parking lot spaces, as long as it's doable and it falls under what we're saying, and that is the social distancing, the welfare of people and the protection of wherever they're situated at, but the social distancing and then the mask unless they're eating.
I'm all for that, if we can get it done as soon as possible, you know, have a special meeting if we need to.
I was just going to recommend, I think it would, some particular direction. How do you want, I mean, do you want this, I said this, do you want us to work individually with businesses? Because they're going to be different, they're all going to look different, or do you want us to work with one entity that is coordinating that on their behalf?
If I can throw in,
Please.
some of the business may not have the affiliation or the relationship with the entity to be able to accommodate as positive an outcome as they would like, and it also would involve gaining a potential relationship for that, which I'm not necessarily opposed to, but out of fairness, looking at the opportunities, because we've already identified several different scenarios with businesses. So I might be more in favor of looking at individually assessing desire and looking at availability of spaces. And if I could change my position or my posture to give a positive suggestion in this regard, if we're looking at the Main Street reconstruction project, and if we're wiping out any of those planters at all, we should consider using some of those planters for this and maybe modifying the planters which already have electrical, which already have trees, which may have partial shade. If any of those are going to be wiped out during the project or reconstructed or redeveloped, that's a potential thing to look at, which would afford us the space that we're looking to give for the 6 feet.
So I would say yes. I think that's what you're saying, is that the city staff look at it individually with the businesses. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, yeah.
Yes, I would prefer that, because it'll take time to work with the chamber, and I would just prefer that the staff deal with it, bring us the results, and then we can just move forward with it. And I want to bring one more element out. And so we're asking businesses now to maybe create this kind of area. Is there any way we can use money from our that we were going to use for the businesses to do any of this? And it's not as a gift of public funds, but we would keep those items for future events? I'm just throwing it out.
Well, I mean, the businesses can apply for those costs. I mean, those are all eligible expenses in business assistance.
Okay.
But what also could be, and this is what I would suggest, like I said, Mr. Knight has had, he's just as Ms. Phillips has looked at, Ms. Byers, the number of folks have looked, there are different ways to do this. It really goes to what extent do you want to be responsible or somebody else? I don't know how else to say that other than how I said it. But
The chamber has to provide liability insurance for a community civic event.
right, which is, so my question was going to be to Ms. Byers and to Ms. Liu. Do we have the authority to even do that without council approval? Because the means that I'm aware of is by a community civic event. You have an encroachment permit. I mean, there's some limited, but I don't know that staff has the, under ordinance, the authority to do any of this.
As far as well, if they approve it tonight, we do I think under the emergency powers. So I think we have more authority. I think we have the authority. I mean, council would have to give us authority tonight. I mean, we need something more than what we don't have the authority right now, absent the council giving us the go-ahead. But I think you could. I would certainly require, at the bare minimum, the businesses, if they want to operate in the public right-of-way with these conditions, will be indemnifying the city.
Okay.
There's no way we're not requiring that, and I think they'll probably willingly do it. I mean, we're all used to, at this point, I sign waivers every day for every normal activity, you know, just because that's the new way of life. But we would need to be doing that.
So could they submit the forms that we used to get for events? You know, where they'd have to have that $1 million, is that too far out?
The civic event fund?
Well, and this is what I was going to say. When we do these, I'll let Patrice speak to this specifically. The city's named as an additional insured that usually has a $2 million.
We probably would need to require them to have the insurance to cover it.
That's what I'm saying. So there's going to be some insurance. This is typically why you use the nonprofits, because these businesses are going to have to increase their insurance requirements.
But I think honestly, I mean, I can see it being an issue for those organizations. We don't already have because it's really actually we need a downtown business association.
Mm-hmm.
We need a business district that we don't have anymore. That these were the groups that used to operate. So our options are a little bit limited when it comes to organizations, and I'm not sure the chamber is going to be able to carry all that. That's the issue. So really, it needs to fall on the individual businesses, and I suppose the city, we can require that. It can be a condition of them even being allowed to do it.
I'm going to ask
So-
another question. As through all of this process and all of this discussion, and we're having the discussion on civic events and out in the community, and this is going to be the outdoors, and with ADA and restroom facilities.
Well, okay, so with the restroom facility issue, typically the way that's handled is that you are allowed to use the indoor restaurant facility restrooms. So they, for that very limited purpose, and that limited purpose only. And that's how you take care of the hand washing and restroom capabilities. So that can be fairly readily addressed. Obviously, the restaurant has to have those open, though, for their customers if they're going to do that.
In that scenario, though, they could also choose to, should they have the ability to use a different area, to have an area specifically for hand washing if they didn't
They
want it
could.
open?
I just realistically, let's be honest. I mean, they're struggling to find the space for the eating and maintain the social distancing. I have a feeling that'll probably end up defaulting to the indoor.
So in this scenario, even looking at them partnering with any nonprofit, because some churches or other groups do set up booths and food booths at other events and may have a hand washing station that they may be able to loan. So it could be a cooperation between a nonprofit, any nonprofit they choose to sponsor this activity, modified civic event that's not encouraging hundreds of people to come, but rather just the access and liability parts of it. I think, I mean, when you look at that, if it's doable, but I think those are the concerns that I think I had initially, was how would all those functions of eating and staying clean and following guidance be in effect? And I appreciate the mayor bringing that up, because that had escaped me as far as the restroom and the hand washing.
With regard to.
I'm really glad to hear Ms. Lou's interpretation on that as well, just because we were talking about, porta potties, and, I will do whatever it takes to not have to use a porta potty. And so to have them out there in 100-degree weather adjacent to where you're going to be eating didn't seem like a pleasant experience. So it's good to see that there's an alternative. We can also require upon entry hand sanitizer. I mean, there's other things to do.
Okay.
If you check in with a hostess here, please use this hand sanitizer as you get seated.
Patrice, you had comment?
Yeah, going back to the insurance, I think there's going to be an issue with exclusions being added by the insurance providers for communicable diseases. And so I think we're going to, and when I say we, the council is going to have to make a decision whether we're going to assume that liability, because they're going to want to transfer the risk.
Okay.
What do restaurants currently do, well, before they had to go to outdoor seating and businesses and that kind of thing? Was that a,
Well, I'm sure it was included prior to COVID.
you know, yeah.
Yeah. I think ultimately what ends up happening is it translates to a waiver that the restaurant needs to require from the customer. I mean, that's how it has to be. That's, likely how it would have to be done. And that's the one area, that they probably haven't, nobody's really been thinking about that. Just having been to at least a couple outdoor restaurants, I don't think that's the one place I was not required to sign a waiver.
Yeah, I raised it because in the renewals through the RMA, it came up with all the carriers and all the excess carriers, that they're all excluding communicable diseases.
Which means that if our insurance is excluding it, the private insurers will be excluding it as well. So it is that is something that we can't avoid. That is a fact of life. So then the only thing we can do is require the customers to sign waivers, which then minimizes the chances of them filing a suit.
Okay. We've had quite a bit of discussion this evening to this regard. I'm going to bring it back.
I can do some research too, Mayor.
Pardon me?
I haven't been in the loop completely on this issue, so I will do some research too.
Please do the research for us. And now, I know that one of the council members wanted to have a special meeting to this regard and bringing it back. Please.
Whenever they get it done.
Whenever we can get it done, okay. Vice Mayor, Councilmember Peñalosa, I haven't heard from you.
No, the only thing I'll add is that I think I do always appreciate the public comment from the public, and especially small businesses I know that are struggling. I myself am not a business owner. I can only imagine the difficulties that they're encountering right now, and I know it may be easy for someone like me to say, focus on deliveries, but that's not always the best, for a lot of businesses. And so I'm in favor of moving forward with all the suggestions in terms of looking for other avenues for small businesses to be able to conduct their businesses and serve the public. At the same time, finding that balance is what I'm all about. So, I appreciate the Vice Mayor's comments that the chief main thing that we should be focused is the public safety and the health of our communities. So that should be our for me, it's personally what I'm looking at. And so, but I appreciate the staff's some of the things that they're working on and looking for, because I do think we're trying to find proactive ways to ensure that our small businesses can continue to serve, and that continue to suffer, or at least alleviate some of the suffering that's occurring due to the pandemic in terms of their businesses. But that's pretty much it. I look forward to seeing what we can bring back and having a fuller discussion on it.
Thank you. Mr. Lawless, have we given you quite a bit of information?
Well, I didn't hear a specific which way you wanted to approach. You just want us to try to figure it out.
And then I think they wanted a special meeting.
You want the approach?
Well, it's either, there's going to be liability issues that I promise are going to be a part of this, which I would want the council to deliberate specifically if you want the liability.
And we would have to discuss that at a meeting, wouldn't it? Is it going to be brought? Go ahead, please.
I would go with what the city attorney suggested, and that is that the customer sign off the liability.
If they can't get insurance to cover it, which probably is going to be the case.
If we can't get insurance, and that we look at the possibility of using, as shown in the slides, something that would be in those parking slots, and that the sanitizers be available, but also that they use their mask except for when they're eating, and that you keep the 6 feet social distancing from those that are walking on the sidewalk. Helping you guys. What else was it? That you worked not just on the parking lots, but also parking lots that may be adjacent or behind the restaurants that they could use. What else do you need? What else? Anything else? And bring those back and let's work with the businesses on it.
So Councilmember Gurrola, essentially the 6 feet walking eliminates any use of sidewalk. Our sidewalks are 10 feet, ADA requires 4. So by the time you do 6 foot safe and then 4 foot for ADA, you've run out of room for tables.
If you have that, like the model showed, the picture showed?
Oh, like in the parking stalls?
Yes.
The parking stalls would be able to accomplish that.
But you would not, you would not have any tables on the sidewalk.
No, they would all be on those
The parking
They
lot.
would be, they would
platforms.
be in the parking spot.
Yes, on the platforms and the parking spots. I believe that we can accommodate businesses during this time of the pandemic. And yes, we're gonna lose a few parking slots, but in the overall picture, it helps the businesses as well. And so, unless the rest of the council doesn't agree with that, but that's what I thought we were talking about, was that platform.
And I would like to add something, Mayor.
Go ahead.
And I'm not too sure, I'm very curious to see, and I hope we can bring back, I think that's what staff may be bringing back, but the cost associated to having some of these, parking lot stalls out there, because, I don't know how it would work. If it will be the city purchasing them or renting them out, or we're going to be requiring the businesses to buy them. Because I think it's, they're going to cost a couple $1,000s, and how does that look like for them to purchase them? And so I know I'm curious to know how much those things cost. So look forward to having a breakdown of that as well.
They could apply for the funding, is what was said.
Okay.
I did have one more thing that I just wanted to note that in the 3 times I observed the tables outside, that they were not in use, and that if there's been observable use of those, I think it's good to consider, because ultimately what we're doing is creating tacit approval or encouragement for the activity while we're deflecting liability for it. So we need to look seriously whether the public actually wants it or whether it's driven by the desire of the business, and if that encouraging that is what's going to make it happen, then it's going to be difficult for us to justify deflecting the liability entirely. Of course, that would be my preference, is to not be liable, but we just have to be cognizant that by participating in this, we may be encouraging a use which is not the desire of the general public, but simply the desire of the business, and by so encouraging it.
And now is really a perfect time to be talking about this. I think we discussed this a little bit with council before. Right now, it's very hot, but this is a completely different conversation a month from now. And so if we can get some things dialed in.
Okay. Is there anything else that we need to bring?
So just for clarification, it needs to come back though for approval eventually. Because I think there's too many variables to try to.
Exactly.
I could go out on a limb here, but I think that's a lot for just staff doesn't want to make assumptions about what the council wants.
Right.
So I think this will need to come back for approval once we kind of work through some of the issues.
And you've got enough information.
There's
to
a
work
lot
with
here.
that. Okay, you've gotten enough
Can I make a
information.
suggestion to staff?
What?
Can I make a suggestion to staff? Do what you think you would do if you were councilman. Bring back to us what you think is right.
Thank you for that.
If you're in our seats. You got some direction, but you know what we want, and you know what's right and what's wrong and what will work and what won't. Bring it back to us. If you're sitting in those seats, okay, this is what I would want.
Well, if I may, that is, if you look at how other cities are doing this and what I began the conversation, it should be a nonprofit. This is how you do it. You have an entity that works. It's how they did it in Visalia, and that's how they did it in Tulare. They go, they put together the plan, and they come to you for approval.
And you're absolutely right, Mr. Lawless. I think the issue right now is that the chamber is going through a change, and I don't believe it's going to work fast enough for us. I mean, that's just my personal feeling.
Okay,
I think it's worth pursuing, though. We haven't, I don't think we've told, I don't know where the conversations are with them yet, but it still might be worth at least,
having a conversation.
Having that
So with
conversation.
that being said, it's going to be brought back with all the information, all the recommendations and itemizations. We've had quite a bit of the discussion. We already had the motion on the table to continue the proclamation of local emergency to COVID-19, and we had a second. If there's no further discussion, please call for vote.
I thought it was voted on already, no?
It hasn't been voted on.
It hasn't? Okay. Gotcha.
You have to-
It's way up here. I've got it. It was Mayor Flores made the motion and Vice Mayor Reyes made the second, yeah.
All right, please call for vote.
Councilmember Gurrola,
Aye.
Councilmember Peñalosa,
Aye.
Councilmember Stowe,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Reyes,
Aye.
Mayor Flores.
Aye, passes unanimous, 5-0. Thank you very much. We will now move into oral communications.
Brock Neely, address on record. The one thing I would be interested to know is the businesses that are restaurants down there that are paying any kind of parking lot assessment. Because if they're not paying any parking lot assessment, they shouldn't be using that parking lot to do business. The other thing is, has environmental health been discussed on this? On whether everything meets health code? Then the other good news, yesterday on the governor's briefing, he says our 7-day average for positivity on testing is 17.7% in Tulare County. So if you base that on Porterville's population, divide 66,000 by 17.7%, there's potentially 11,682 people walking around positive in this town. Think about that, based on the math.
Thank you very much. And we have no other oral communications that would have come in electronically.
No, Your Honor.
Thank you very much. We will now move into other matters. Councilmember Gurrola.
I want to thank all the staff for the work that they've been doing under this incredible situation, along with the city manager, our chief, our police. They've just been working very diligently in maintaining the city and keeping us going. So I really want to thank them.
Thank you. Councilmember Stowe.
Well, am I on? Yes, I have to echo what Councilwoman Gurrola said. I do appreciate our staff, the way they're working in these situations. But, you know, I want to encourage them and urge them to keep themselves safe. You know, don't put yourself in jeopardy with, you know, we have to rotate people in, we rotate people in. I mean, that's just the way it is. But I don't want any of them to come down with the virus any more than we've had. We've had a few, so let's just make sure that we stay safe.
Thank you. Councilmember Peñalosa.
Yeah, I do want to say a couple of things. Thank you, Mayor, for recognizing the loss of life from the U.S. Marines. My condolences to those families and everyone affected by those deaths. Many of them young folks and Marines, and you know their lives were taken so really early. I also just want to send my condolences to those that were affected by the explosion in Beirut. I don't know, most of us have heard of that, but it was very devastating, and still, you know, the effects of that is still, you know, changing by the hour. Along with my condolences to the families that have lost their lives to COVID in Tulare County, 193 deaths as of today, and outside of just that being a number, those are families, those are people that have passed away, and want to send out my condolences to those families as well, and just want to wish the staff good luck tomorrow at the business loan webinar that they'll be having, and hopefully that go great, and just re-emphasizing what the rest of council have mentioned. We thank you for all your hard work. And lastly, the face covering ordinance. Just once again, letting folks. I want to just share with folks, everyone in the community that may be listening in, that to follow our ordinance. We really want to make sure that we can save lives through this pandemic. So, and that's all, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor, and I wish I could have led off with thanking the staff for their work, and that obviously a lot of frustrating topics these days, and definitely not directed at anybody's efforts, because I know everybody is making their best efforts, and during trying times, that's when a lot of the most important decisions need to be made, and appreciate asking for the guidance and the council giving it. And also just wanted to acknowledge that in the explosion in Beirut, and having people that I know there, and people that actually lost their home through the explosion, knowing that there's now people not only having to contend with COVID, but also becoming homeless, and also those that were injured or killed in the event. So keeping in mind that at any time, those sorts of things can happen anywhere, along with the things we're experiencing. And just, as I said, I wish I could have led off with thanking the staff, and I continue to hope for myself and everyone else, but especially for me, because sometimes it's hard to afford people the grace to be able to function during these times.
Thank you very much. In the city of Porterville and several organizations, when we began to have discussion of the 2020 census, that was months and months ago, and it began with the Tulare County Complete Census Count Committee, and Porterville formed a Porterville Local Census Count Committee, which brought in the local agencies of the school districts, the nonprofits, and everybody was proactive in reaching out to the communities and focusing on the census. It's still there. The self-response date was moved from October the 31st to September the 30th. And people who have not responded can still do so by internet, phone, and mail. Responding online would be to 2020census.gov, or you can call 1-844-330-2020. I believe Porterville has done very well in their response time, over the 60% in responding to the census. Now I wish to say, Mr. Lawless and city staff and everybody that's all inclusive here tonight, and those of you that are online, and that would include my colleagues as council members, as we continue to strive to the resiliency of this community through the several obstacles that may have set us back, as we move forward, that we continue to focus on the resiliency of our community. I am saddened at times to know that it isn't just us, and that there are many organizations who are working with rotating shifts to accommodate the services. And I can only imagine some of the stress, having worked for an agency that provided the services, and sometimes patience is not a virtue, and you have to deal with the consequences of what's going on. I have watched, I have observed, and I have seen some of you from a distance, and I applaud each and every one of you for your efforts. I know that you're not alone, and know that we will continue to support you in your endeavors, because you are very much appreciated. Mr. Lawless.
Thank you, Honor. Just a couple of things. Hopefully, the City Hall remediation project will be wrapping itself up shortly, and Fire Station 1 I appreciate the council's patience this evening as some technical difficulties were experienced, as well as, it seems maybe we hired somebody by the last name of Murphy recently, because it seems if it's going to go wrong, it seems to do that. So we need to fire that Murphy. And apologies if we have an employee by the last name.
We'll find out.
But I appreciate the comments from the council, and I'm amazed at the folks that continue to come to work with all the challenges and work very diligently. We had and I want to call attention to Chief Lapierre, and we had, beyond just the challenges of the operation or the missed opportunities, and I kind of speak to that about community events, but we also have things where we empower or we embrace those that we work with, and we had 4 new firefighters, which the council has been great about attending and supporting those folks who joined, but we had to have a badge pinning on Friday that you couldn't be a part of, but it was only the chief, those 4, not their families. There's been some great personnel that have joined the department and helped writing that story, the next chapter of the fire department story, and there are unquantified elements to this that I want to, and I appreciate Chief Lapierre and what he did on Friday, and I just wanted him to know and the council to know that, I look forward to a time that we'll be able to make it right. You have extraordinary folks that are joining your organization and wanting to be a part of it and to throw in with you, and I just want to say thanks in that regard.
Thank you very much.
Also, Miss Hildreth had a birthday, but it's passed.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Happy late birthday.
Happy
Yes,
birthday.
happy birthday.
Okay. Do you everybody heard that? Patrice Hildreth had a birthday.
Hey, we're not going to talk about that.
I know, he will deny it, but we all know.
Okay. All right. If there's no further discussion, we will now go back into closed session. It is 8:49.
And I'll say for the record that there's no reporting anticipated out of closed session.
Thank you.
Can we have a 5-minute break?
Yes.
Thank you.